Hey, welcome to Mother's Day. If you don't know the two of us, I'm Dan and this is Lynn.
Mother, father.
Mother, father, husband, wife. And we're going to just start with a couple of Mother's Day questions for you to kind of get to know Lynn a little bit. So first question, what was your best Mother's Day moment?
So if we're talking about the day.
That's what I said, the day.
Okay. But it was the day before that I got the
that's fine.
surprise.
That's fine. Okay.
So, and I think we talked about last year, one of the years, Jake was away at college. Katie was home for some reason. Anyways, it was my birthday and Mother's Day. My birthday is right around Mother's Day always,
Yep.
May 10th. And they surprised me and Jake came home. So for the first time in a number of years, I had all the kids home. But also, a day before Mother's Day was when Josh was born on my birthday,
Yeah,
day
right,
before
right,
Mother's
yeah.
Day. So there's a lot of Mother's Days where it's been both Josh and I's birthday also. And
Yeah.
he was the greatest birthday gift. I can't say the best Mother's Day gift because all of my kids are good Mother Day gift.
So second question, what do you like least about your Mother's Day?
About Mother's What I like least about Mother's Day, I think, so this will not apply to everyone.
Sure,
but
sure.
As a pastor's wife, Mother's Day is always on a Sunday.
Yep.
And so it was always Dan, you going out the door and me being back with all the kids. You always did something to make
Pretty
it
much
special.
probably never made breakfast for you on Mother's Day.
No. And I don't know that I really want to eat breakfast in bed, to be honest. But I also think that my Mother's Day, like when the kids were very little, I think a great Mother's Day would be if you said, take 5 guilt-free hours and go do whatever you want.
Yeah.
As I've gotten older and the kids are gone, it's more, I would love to have another
Kids
Mother's Day
around.
where everyone's home, kids,
Yeah.
spouses, grandkids.
And last question, who's your favorite kid?
Yes, that last year. I have no favorites.
Oh, come on.
I have-
You can be honest.
They're all favorites
Favorite
for
grandkid?
different reasons. Are you kidding me?
Okay. So let's all
love them
start
all.
this Mother's Day with a question. The question is, what do you have to do? What is your have to? And I'm not talking about the stuff that someone else is making you do or even all the tasks on your to-do list. I'm talking about your own personal have to. What do you feel compelled to do? Like life would not be worth living if you could not do that. One of my favorite pictures of our kids, an image that I carry around kind of in my heart, is my son Jake. He was about 4 or 5, and we were at teacher-parent conferences. It wasn't his, it was Katie's or Sarah's, one of them. And he was outside playing on the playground, getting so stinking dirty. And we came out, he's sitting there waiting in the sandbox. I think he had been pouring dirt on his head. And he looked up at Lynn and said, "Mom, if I didn't have dirt, I think I would die." Dirt was his have to. Steve Feltham quit his job over 34 years ago to search for the Loch Ness Monster. He hasn't quit looking since 1991. He sold his house and bought a van to live in so he could pursue his passion. In fact, they did a documentary on him because he held the Guinness World Record for the longest continuous search for Nellie, the Loch Ness Monster. But here's what I love. Here's what he said in the documentary. "The reason I gave up everything to solve this mystery is because that is what makes my heart sing." Nellie is his have to. What is your have to? Get the grade, get the job, buy the stuff, secure the relationship, find a friend, have the look, have a certain sort of family. What compels you? What compels us? Another word for our have tos is thirst. Where are you going to satisfy the thirst of your soul? And we can all agree, I think, that sometimes the things we think we have to do don't really satisfy. So Lynn, just share a little bit about some of those have-tos that don't really satisfy. A woman's have-tos, a mother's have-to.
I think as mothers, as women, we have a million have-tos that keep us really distracted and often overwhelmed from the beauty of the thirst for Christ. So I think a lot of women I have to do it all. I have to be good at everything, and I have to do it all without asking for help. I have to meet everyone else's needs. I have to be perfect. I have to be a perfect mom or Christian or wife or friend. I have to be patient. I have to be perfect. I have to have perfectly behaved kids. Try to have that as your goal. I think for people who aren't moms, there's sometimes a lie. I have to be married. I have to have children. I have to have it all together. I have to juggle work, home, church, friendships, and I can't ever break a sweat doing it. Having the clean house and the good cook. I mean, that mothering would be so easy if our kids didn't need to eat. I have to be strong always. I have to make it look effortless. And then I was talking to our XYM girls and saying, what are the have-tos for you in school? And two of the big ones they talked about was I have to be popular and I have to be good at sports or music or art or academics. You know what? There's those have-tos that drive them in their school lives. So I guess my question for women out there is, what's your have-to? Every one of our distracted have-tos keep us away from true intimacy. They keep us away from intimacy with God and with others. They block us from being authentically who God created us to be. And they often build these walls of self-protection in our hearts because we know we're not getting it all done. We know we're not perfect. And trying to keep up with all the have-tos, it's completely exhausting and it drains us of life. It also keeps us in, and you knew this word was going to come up here somewhere, it keeps us in shame, and it empowers the lie that I'm not enough. It causes us to thirst after the wrong things, the things that will never satisfy, like image and stuff and control, comfort, and instead of the true life, the true place we get life.
So we're looking at a story this weekend for Mother's Day that digs into our have-to. And the story is found in John chapter 4. There are many stories in the Gospels that tell us what Jesus did, but there are only a few that tell us what he had to do, what compelled him, what he lived for. And one of those is here in John chapter 4. So we're going to start the story in verse 3, and here's what it says. So he left Judea and went back once more to Galilee. Now he had to go through Samaria. So he came to a town in Samaria called Sychar, near the plot of ground that Jacob had given to his son Joseph, and Jacob's well was there. And Jesus, tired as he was from the journey, sat down by the well, and it was about noon. Now, if you know your New Testament geography, it would be easy to miss the significance of the statement, he had to go through Samaria. Because if Jesus was in Judea and he was going to Galilee, the most direct course would be to walk north through Samaria. Google Maps says Jesus had to go through Samaria to get to Galilee. But I'm convinced the words had to hold greater meaning. You see, it was Samaria, and the Samaritans were spiritually and culturally rejected by the Jews. It was a racial thing. They worshiped wrong. They believed wrong. Their culture was wrong. They were born wrong. And over the centuries, this prejudice had formed. Hatred and animosity flowed pretty freely between the two groups. And so just picture this hot, dusty, barren vista as Jesus and his followers take the shortest route between Judea in southern Israel and Galilee in northern Israel. And I don't know, as they walk, I can almost imagine the muttering, right? The disciples muttering, wonder, why would Jesus take a shortcut through a neighborhood that any good religious person would avoid like the plague, Samaria? Because if it was up to these followers of Jesus, they would walk an extra day to stay out of Samaria. But Jesus had to go through Samaria. He had to. The Greek word translated as had to is often a word that signifies a divine necessity. It's the word day. It means it was necessary. It signifies like a divine appointment has been scheduled for Jesus. So here's a thought I want to start with this weekend. Thirsty people are Jesus' have to. He's compelled. His heart is drawn to love thirsty people. Lynn, tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I feel like the truest have to is that at the heart of all of us, we want to be seen, we want to be known, and we want to be loved. And the beauty of this story is that Jesus went out of his way to connect to this woman at the well, way out of his way. And he didn't look at her as an inconvenience, unworthy of his time and his presence. He made her his have-to, and in the midst of her sin and shame, like he knew the sin and shame in her life, and he still wanted to meet with her, connect with her. And I think that Jesus would say that she and even we are his get-to, not his have-to. And that made me think about, as I was raising our kids, I felt like mothering was my get-to. It wasn't always easy. It can feel relentless at times. Sometimes we have no downtime. There were times that it was really messy and I was exhausted. I'm sure there were moments that I questioned my sanity and my life choices.
Maybe I questioned it,
And maybe
too.
you did too. But the gift of being a mom to my kids was never lost on me, or at least not for very long. But I think that hit me the hardest when each one of them left home, left the nest. I can remember driving. Sarah was our oldest, and she went to Penn State. I can remember driving
far
her
away.
to her dorm 1 mile away from the front. My front door to her dorm was 1 mile, and I dropped her off, and I sobbed the whole way home. And then 2 years later, I can remember driving Katie out to Minnesota, to Bethel. And on the way, it's about an 18-hour drive, probably if you drive fast. On the way out, we stopped at a Starbucks, and Katie and I went into the Starbucks while Dan was filling up with gas. And I went up to order Starbucks, and Katie was kind of right behind me. And the barista just said, "So, how's your day going? How are you doing?" And I very unexpectedly burst into sobs, not just like a few tears trickling down, and Katie looked like a deer in headlights, and the emotion was just so close to the surface, and I was just sad that she was leaving. And then Jake went to Minnesota for college, and that he was the third one. I feel like maybe it felt a little bit easier only because I knew I could survive it. When the first two, I'm like, I don't know if I can even live through this, but still so many tears. And then Josh, the last one, I started grieving Josh going to Bethel before he even left. And my big moment of I'm not okay was I went to get groceries, and I was standing in the aisle with ketchup, and I had this realization that I would never have to buy the huge jumbo
Josh had
2
ketchup
packs
on
of
everything.
ketchup. And I burst into tears in the middle of aisle 7. I lost it in aisle 7. I knew that each of my kids was my get-to, this gift that Jesus entrusted to me. And I had the call, my truest call was to make sure that they knew that they were known, seen, and loved by me. I think I added all sorts of expectations on them, on me. But those are the misguided have-tos. My call as their mom was to make sure that they were seen, and they knew they were seen, known, and loved.
Yeah.
And now we get to do it with our grandkids, and that is such a gift.
Yeah.
With my kids and grandkids, I do not have to work up the desire to be with them like that. It's just there. I get to be with them. I want to be near them. So, ladies, we need to get so deeply into our hearts the truth that we are Jesus' get-to. He desires to be known by us. He desires to be with us. We're not his obligation. We're his delight. He isn't disappointed in you. He's not waiting for us to do things right or correctly. He shows us over and over that he loves us right where we're at. At a well, thirsty and hiding, feeling unseen and like a failure, he goes out of his way to seek us because he loves to be with us.
Yeah.
We're his get-to.
Jesus was compelled by compassion. He was compelled to love us. It was like he couldn't help it. If you ended up in Jesus' path, you kind of got his heart all over you. But just as an aside before we continue on, if you read the whole story, all of chapter 4 later today, let me encourage you to do that. You'll see that that's not his only have-to. This story at its heart is all about worship. In fact, every time we talk about our have-to and soul thirst, heart thirst, we're really just scratching the surface of worship. And Jesus is on a quest here in this story, but still today, not just to satisfy our thirst, but to initiate worship. And worship is initiated by Jesus, by God, at the intersections of real life, and in the midst of hard marriages and racial conflict, in the midst of mothering and the very real pain that moms can experience, rejection. This is not a chance occurrence. Jesus had to go through Samaria. Why? Because God is always seeking worshipers. And notice where Jesus' quest for worshipers leads. He doesn't go to the temple. He doesn't go to church or even find this beautiful place by a stream in the woods. On this day, he'll sit by a well on a dusty trail near a village filled with people that his friends want to avoid. Bone weary from his journey, he decides even here, even now, in this place, I'm going to find somebody to worship Father God. Sometimes we might be surprised at the places where worship happens. It doesn't always take choirs or bands singing songs that move our hearts. It doesn't always take a sermon. Sometimes all you need is a well, a woman with a thirsty heart, and Jesus. Because worship is what happens when the life of God begins to flow through the dry wastelands of a soul. So let's take a look at the anatomy of a thirst. Here's what it says. Jesus comes to this town of Sychar. He sits down by the well outside of town. It's a bit afternoon as we dive in at verses 7 through 11. And here's what it says. A woman from Samaria came to draw water, and Jesus said to her, "Give me a drink." For his disciples had gone away into the city to buy food. The Samaritan woman said to him, "How is it that you, a Jew, ask for a drink from me, a woman of Samaria? For the Jews have no dealings with Samaritans." And Jesus answered, "If you knew the gift of God and who it is that's saying to you, 'Give me a drink,' you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water." The woman said to him, "Sir, you have nothing to draw water with, and the well is deep. Where do you get that living water?" So they've been traveling all day. Jesus and his disciples, they go into town to buy food. They're not really happy because they're in Samaria, and Samaritans are on their beneath me, I don't care about you kind of list, but they're hungry. As they walk in to get food, they pass a woman going out. I mean, think about that. She's headed towards Jesus. They're headed away from Jesus. Let me just say, sometimes direction matters far more than distance. I mean, the distance is nothing to Jesus, but the question is, are you headed towards Jesus or are you headed away from him? Some of the most unexpected people in the world are already headed towards Jesus. They just need a little direction. They need a walking buddy. So they're on their way into town, and she's on her way to the well, and I got to wonder what they're thinking as they pass her by. Man, I hope she doesn't bother Jesus. I wonder, did any of them consider helping her carry her water jugs? Did anyone smile? Did they even see her? Lynn, what grabs you with this part of the story?
I think that this unnamed woman came to the well at noon in the heat of the day because she was running and hiding from the very thing she needed the most. She needed community. She needed to be seen, and she needed to be known, and she needed to be loved. And she was trying to hide while at the same time she was desperate to be seen. Have you ever felt invisible? Like maybe not physically invisible, but emotionally or spiritually, that no one really sees who I am. And I think there's at least a part of most of us, especially women, who desperately want to be seen, but at the same time, we're terrified of being found. So this woman is coming out to the well at the time she thinks nobody else will be there. And sadly, mostly she's hiding from the other women because she's not accepted with the other woman. But she didn't stop and turn around. When she looked ahead, she would have seen Jesus at the well probably before she got there. She didn't stop and turn around. She's more desperate to be seen than even she realizes. And she's a woman much like we are in so many ways. She's very familiar with disappointment. Not only being disappointed, but also feeling like a disappointment. She's familiar with shame. She's been looking for connection and love with every empty relationship. She's driven further into her shame and her isolation. And she's familiar with loneliness. Her shame has driven her to hide from relationships. She's isolating herself because of it. So she believes she's protecting herself, but really she's driving her shame and her loneliness even deeper. So she's familiar with disappointment. She's familiar with shame. She's familiar with loneliness.
And she's unfamiliar with God's gift. She's unfamiliar with living water. When our deepest needs go unsatisfied time after time, we find ourselves familiar with disappointment and shame and loneliness, but we're unfamiliar with God's gift of living water. Jesus says in verse 10 to her, if you knew the gift of God and who I am, you would ask me for living water. And she says, hey, the well is so deep, and what the heck is living water? She didn't know. She didn't know that God was getting ready to hang the record of all her failures, all her rejections on a cross with the words stamped, "It is finished." She didn't know that Jesus is the forgiver of sins, the giver of life, the healer of hearts. She's faced so much rejection. Read the story. Husbands, neighbors, the Jews. I mean, she doesn't know she's found the one who knows her the best and loves her the most. She's not familiar with God's gift. And you understand, I hope, you understand this is still true today, right? So many people are unfamiliar with God's gift. They don't know that they are the have-to, the get-to of Jesus' heart. And if that's you, I just want you to know He's encouraging you right now to find your well. Jesus continues the conversation in verse 13.
Jesus said to her, "Everyone who drinks of this water will be thirsty again, but whoever drinks of the water that I will give him will never be thirsty again. The water that I will give him will become in him a spring of water welling up to eternal life." And the woman said to him, "Sir, give me this water so that I will not be thirsty." So I think Jesus is offering her fulfillment and meaning in her life in unending supply. You don't ever have to feel not enough in relationships, accomplishments, mothering, marriage, work, school, because the offer is for never-ending, soul-quenching life and relationship with Jesus. What Jesus is offering is a freedom of finding worth in Him, our worth in Him, not in comparison, not in what others think. He's offering what satisfies our souls, because with Him we're seen and we're known and we're loved. And He assures us that we are enough because He is enough. So what is the woman at the well truly seeking? So I think she's seeking more. I don't even think she knows what more she's seeking, but she's seeking more than she recognizes. She doesn't know it yet, but her thirst is for Jesus.
Yeah.
Her worth is in Jesus. She's seeking intimacy and an identity. She has not found it in any of the wells that she's been going to. But here's Jesus meeting her at her deepest need, and she doesn't even know she has that need. So in my own story, I feel like lately, over the last few months, I've been struggling a little bit in my intimacy with Jesus. And I feel like we all need to be okay with knowing that we all struggle sometimes. I realize and have realized through this whole shame trip that I have this deep want to feel pursued by Jesus. But lately, I feel like he's been calling me to also pursue Him, which I do in very normal ways, reading the Bible, and praying. But there's something deeper, something more that He wants me to do, to pursue Him. And to be honest, I think that feels riskier to me than being pursued by Jesus, because somewhere within me there still lurks this fear that if I pursue Him with all of me, He'll stay just ahead of me enough that I won't quite catch up. And if that's true, the root fear is that my deepest desire and longing for intimacy could be rejected. And it feels like I have a lot more control over my have-tos, the things that I can do, than I do over my deep desire for intimacy and connection with Jesus, my being. But like the woman at the well, I have to remember Jesus is not running away from me. He's not running away from us. As we pursue Him, we find Jesus waiting for us at the well. Jesus finds us at the well. He's already there. He's already at the well. I'll never forget in his book, The Soul of Shame, one of the things that Kurt Thompson says is that we are born into the world looking for someone, looking for us. Every single one of us will find Jesus already at the well, looking at us, looking for Him. We find Jesus at the well. I think there's deep significance in finding Jesus at the well, which means there must be deep significance for us to have a well.
Yeah.
Where is that place that we are looking intently for Jesus? So my question is, where's your well? Where do you go to look for Jesus? My well is our front porch. When I go out there in the morning, I'm removed from the distractions inside that pull me away from my attention being on Jesus. And I feel like I'm immediately drawn to the feet of Jesus. Do you have a place where you can go and meet with Jesus, where you bring your empty jar to the only one who can satisfy our deepest thirst?
Yeah, and it's not just the place, honestly. It's the time, right? You know, a while back I listened to a sermon that messed with me quite a bit. It was about calendars. A sermon on calendars messed me up a bit. It began with a simple question: what would my schedule look like if God were in charge of it? Now, if God was in charge of our schedules, that would mean that all of our schedules would be the same. I think God created morning people, I don't know why, but I think
We're not
he did. We're not it. The issue isn't so much what does your schedule look like as it is what direction is it aiming your life. You know, for many of us, our calendars run our lives, but they'll ruin our lives if we don't prioritize relationships, especially our relationship with Jesus. You know, setting your schedule today might be one of the most holy tasks we face each week. But her story doesn't stop with encountering Jesus, right? I mean, it goes beyond that. Once she encounters Jesus, she's got to share Jesus. In John chapter 4, verses 28 through 34, here's what it says. So the woman left her water jar and went away into town and said to the people, "Come and see this man who told me all that I ever did. Can this be the Christ?" And they went out of the town and they were coming to him. And meanwhile, the disciples are back. They're urging Jesus, saying, "Rabbi, eat." But he said to them, "I have food to eat that you don't know about." So the disciples said to one another, "Has someone else brought him something to eat?" And Jesus said to them, "My food is to do the will of him who sent me and to accomplish his work." So she has this encounter with Jesus, and she invites others to come and see. And listen, what she did, we should do also. Ladies, you should do. When she found more, she invited others to the well. Come and see. Ladies, when's the last time you invited someone to come and see? You know, I think sometimes we make this evangelism thing so complicated, don't we? We're afraid that we won't have all the answers. We won't know what to say, but it'll get awkward. But at the heart of it, we're just sharing two things. We're sharing Christ and we're sharing our story. You don't need all the answers. In fact, sometimes good questions are far better than answers. I mean, she wasn't even sure that Jesus was the one, and her invitation is going to lead to this citywide revival. I mean, can't we just tell someone our story about Jesus? She told her Jesus story, invited them to come and see it. It's not about which church you go to or your stance on the issues or your politics. It's all about Jesus, the good news story of Jesus. And when you share Jesus and you share your story, here's what you're going to find. Not only does Jesus quench your thirst, but sharing Jesus is food for your soul. I mean, the disciples are urging Jesus to eat the food they so courageously went into this town to get. And what does Jesus say? My food is to do the will of him who sent me. My food is the mission of God, doing the mission of God. And you hear what I think he's saying kind of under his breath? You guys, you just don't get it. When are you going to figure out that there's something more important than lunch? It's larger than what we have and what we desire. It is my have to. And I can't help but ask, what if he's right? I mean, what if Jesus is telling the truth, and it's not just a truth for him, it's a truth for us? What if the reason we live spiritually anemic lives is because we're starving for obedience? What if the reason our marriages keep ending and we have all these struggles? What if the reason we have so little joy in mothering is because we've been fasting from the mission of God, fasting from the heart of God? And what if every time you walk next door to develop a friendship, every time you talk about Jesus with your kids or your grandkids, every time you pray for your prodigals, it's like steak and chocolate-covered Rice Krispie bars and Lynn's cinnamon rolls. See, we gotta quit fasting from doing the will of God. Quit starving ourselves from the mission of loving people all the way to Jesus. We need his food more than we know. So who are you inviting to your well?
Little sidebar also. I love that. Like for evangelism, Jesus had to commission the disciples, the 70.
Right.
2 by 2, they had to have a partner. The woman, he didn't even have to commission. She just went.
And she
by
went
herself.
by herself.
She went and she brought a whole town back.
Yeah.
Women are fierce and women have a lot of influence.
That's great.
So I think that women are called to spiritually fight for each other in our marriages, for our kids, for other people's kids, for each other. Part of the inviting people to my well is doing spiritual direction, where we're together listening to the Holy Spirit, watching for the rhythms of the Holy Spirit, and where is God at work in your life, and inviting them into my life and where God's at work in my life. I think one of the wells is helping to lead at XYM. I think a big one is when I live out my faith with my kids, with my grandkids, with those that I do life with. It has to become a part of who I am and how I live. But I have to be very intentional about it. If we don't have that intentionality, I think it doesn't happen. We have to think about who we want to bring with us to encounter Jesus.
You know, out of all the stories in the Gospels, like Lynn was saying, this woman brought more people to Jesus than any one of his disciples. And as I think about this story of the woman at the well, a woman who was seen and valued deeply by Jesus, I feel like I have to offer a bit of a humble apology to the mothers and the daughters of mothers. On behalf of the church and husbands and men, I want to apologize for the times when you've come to your own wells carrying burdens alone. Maybe, like Lynn was saying, hoping to avoid the stares and the whispers. For the times when we've failed to see your thirst. For the times when we've been blind to some of your deepest needs, your need to truly be seen and known and valued beyond what you do, to be loved without condition. And I apologize for the times we've added to your shame rather than offering you living water, for the times when we've benefited from your sacrifice without even acknowledging its cost. I apologize for every time we've treated your spiritual insights as secondary, when, in fact, like the Samaritan woman, you've often been the first evangelists, the ones who have said, "Come and see." I apologize for the times you felt like you had to hide your wounds and your disappointments, your loneliness, carrying them silently while pouring out for others. And I just say, may we as a church family, as husbands, as sons, learn to offer the same living water that Jesus offers, not just in words, but in how we love and how we listen and how we honor you in your journey. For that, I apologize. Lynn also has a worthy challenge.
I think we need to figure out where's our well. We will find places to fill up the empty places in our souls, but what we need is an encounter with Jesus at the well. So where are you encountering Jesus? And then the second challenge is, who are you inviting to your well? Moms, we need to invite our kids to the well. I know it's hard, but don't give up. If they don't see you being satisfied by Jesus, the world is going to lead them to a whole lot of other places, a whole lot of other wells where they'll look for satisfaction. But we have to know and live with the knowledge that Jesus is the only place, that he's the only one, the well is the only place that I can be truly satisfied. So invite others in. Let's not miss the beautiful invitation of Jesus, living water for all who thirst after him. Our kids, they are desperate to see Jesus in us, satisfying our deepest longings and filling us with living water.
Watch this little story, this clip we've put together for mothers, and then Lynn's going to close us in prayer.
I watched her today like I always do. She rolled out of bed and slid into her fuzzy slippers. She trudged into the bathroom and began her normal routine, washing her face, putting makeup on, and doing her hair. After finishing, she looked in the mirror and smiled. Not the smile she does when she's watching babies and puppies, but the smile she smiles to convince herself everything is okay. I wish she heard me when I whispered, "You're one of my best creations," but she didn't. She was already pouring herself a hot cup of coffee and running about her day. She went out the door without grabbing her breakfast. Lunch came, and I was looking forward to our talk we always have before she eats. But a coworker distracted her, and she forgot about it. I blessed her food anyway. She was exhausted after a full day, but she made time to get a workout in. She doesn't want to miss her workout routine and lose that momentum. I tried telling her that she was perfect during her Peloton time, but the music in her AirPods drowned me out. Dinner came and went without a word from her. She's been so busy today, but she always talks to me before bed, and I look forward to it every day. She crawled into bed, and sure enough, she said, "Hi, I missed you today. I'm sorry I got busy and forgot about our conversations." I reminded her that I was there the whole time. She promised to try harder tomorrow, and although I already knew how tomorrow would be, I whispered, "I'll be here tomorrow too."
Watching that video made me just think of this prayer that I want to pray over us to close. It's from a book called Feel, which is a collection of liturgies offering hope for every complicated emotion. And the prayer I'm going to pray for all of you mothers, all of you women, anyone here really, is a prayer about being overwhelmed. So I want you to close your eyes and do a breath prayer. Take a breath in and breathe in, Father God, help me. And breathe out, lay down my burdens. I open my heart to you. I feel overwhelmed. I let myself feel what I feel. My body holds my feelings. Why, soul, are you so afraid? God, before I fight back, carry more, just keep going, I want to stop. Before I disassociate or delve into self-pity or run away, I desire to be still. Before I do anything else, I'd like to hear from you. God, I don't listen to the constant demands stinging me like a windstorm. I don't listen to the burning roar of the ferocious fire encroaching all around me. I don't listen to the circumstances, expectations, needs, deadlines, causing my soul's earth to shake. God, in my overwhelm, I attend to your whisper, inviting me to come to you. Help me distinguish your voice from the voice of my flesh or the world. The voices of my own flesh and the world bring with them panic and pressure. I will know your voice because, like Elijah, when I listen to it, my heart will feel seen. Give me the courage and curiosity to listen to your voice. Allow me to be compassionate and kind to myself as you are compassionate and kind to me. You recollect my heart by your promises. You say, do not fear, for I am with you. I will be your refuge. Nothing can separate you from my love. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. One by one, I lay my burdens down. In holy detachment, I lay down all that you have not asked me to carry. Help me lay down the load that isn't mine and hold delicately what is. Help me give people the load that belongs to them, their pain, their consequences, their responsibilities, their emotions. Help me surrender a future I can't control to you, the God who is fully in control. Help me keep going, not out of fear, but from a desire to be faithful. I slowly release the tight grip I have on my life. I gently open the clasp I have on control. I vulnerably believe that you care about my life more than I do. I don't have to figure out my life on my own. Rather, I get to come to you for the abundant life you promise. God, may I walk with your love at the center of my being. Because of your great love, I am sustained. God, may I be faithful to what you have given me to carry today. It is here, in my overwhelm, that I encounter your humility. You are a big God who cares about my little things. You don't invite me to get out of my feelings, but to find you in them. The thorn of my current circumstances and feelings is the pathway for your love to meet me. And for this, I give you thanks. I will worship your name all the days of my life. Amen.
Amen.